major U.S. newspapers last year criticizing U.S. foreign policy. What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country, because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And, hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not, but I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't. But, you know, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
You said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone in to lose in my life. And if I did decide to do it, I think I'd be inclined. I would say that I would have a hell of a chance of winning, because I think people, I don't know how your audience feels, but I think people are tired of seeing the United States ripped off. And I can't promise you everything, but I can tell you one thing. This country would make one hell of a lot of money from those people that for 25 years have taken advantage. It wouldn't be the way it's been.
Before Donald J. Trump even considered a presidential run, his past, growing up working with his father, learning the business, and as a younger man he went to military school, where he shined in sports and learned the discipline of what it meant to win and lose. It was at this period of life where he did not look at someone as his enemy, rather someone he would fiercely compete against. He learned how to win, and winning became his mantra for life.
Donald Trump was and is a child of New York. Born and raised in the borough of Queens to a life of hard-earned privilege. He was the fourth of 5 children, born to a Scottish immigrant mother, Mary, and a housing developer father, Fred, who left an important mark on his son.
My father was great. Good salesman, good builder. He loved to build houses. He was a good builder. I learned so much from him. And he was a great guy, a lovely guy. I loved my father.
Fred Trump, a shrewd and political businessman, made a fortune building low-income housing in Brooklyn and Queens. The children were all raised to be high achievers, but Donald in particular patterned himself after his father, author Gwenda Blair.
Dad worked 24/7. If it was Sunday, you wouldn't take that day off. You'd put the kids in the car and go over to a construction site. You look for unused nails, because why would you waste a nail? He was a very tough and demanding guy. Said to have told his boys, be killers, win. Very competitive, and that competitive streak came out double in Donald.
So at age 13, Donald's parents shipped him upstate to the New York Military Academy.
Many kids, of course, are desperately homesick, can't wait to go home. He apparently loved military school. He liked the kind of out front, I think, competitiveness of it. There were so many different ways that you could excel and get medals and ribbons, cleanest rooms, shiniest shoes, all that kind of stuff.
Donald Trump thrived, rising in rank, and he was socially popular with men and women. He also gravitated towards sports, or rather, winning in sports, in soccer, wrestling, football, and baseball.
He excelled at baseball to the point where I think his coaches felt that he could become a professional baseball player.
After graduation, he lived at home while commuting to Fordham University in the Bronx.
His sister told me that the reason he went to Fordham, I asked, and she said it's where he got in.
2 years later, he transferred to the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Finance and Commerce.
You won't find people at Penn who say, well, I was Donald's really good friend, I was in a fraternity with him, or we socialized. He didn't do any of those things. He studied, and then come Friday, as soon as he could, he'd jump in his car and go back to Queens where he worked with his dad. So from the very start with Donald, it was about getting control of the family business, building it, growing it, and becoming the rich and famous and powerful person that he eventually became.
In 2015, Donald J. Trump, along with his wife Melania, came down the escalator, after which he made his acceptance to run for president.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States.
Donald J. Trump, ever the competitor, takes on a large group of 17 Republicans fighting to become the nominees for his party. Trump was different than the other candidates. He would play hockey with his opponents by assigning a name to each of his competitors. Whether low-energy Bush or lying Ted Cruz, he played like a hockey player to create a psychological advantage before he even began debating. This was his way of getting the home ice advantage.
And you and I have had this discussion. We're going to make our economy strong again. I'm lowering taxes. We have $2.5 trillion offshore. We have $2.5 trillion that I think is actually $5 trillion because the government has no idea when they say 2.5. They have no idea what they're doing or saying, as they've proven very well. We're going to bring that money back. You take a look at what happened just this week. China bought the Chicago Stock Exchange. China, a Chinese company. A Carrier is moving to Mexico, air conditioning company. Not only the ones I talk about all the time, Nabisco and Ford, and they're all moving out. We have an economy that last quarter, GDP didn't grow. It was flat. We have to make our economy grow again. We're dying. This country is dying, and our workers are losing their jobs. And you're going to lose yourself. I'm the only one going to save Social Security, believe me.
Okay, but how would you actually do that? Can I ask you? Because right now, Social Security
you have tremendous
and Medicare,
waste. I'll tell
they take up 2/3 of the
you
federal
have
budget, and they're
tremendous
growing.
waste, fraud, and abuse. That we're taking care of. That we're taking care of. It's tremendous. We have in Social Security right now thousands and thousands of people that are over 106 years old. Now, you know they don't exist. They don't exist. There's tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're going to get it. But we're not going to hurt the people who've been paying into Social Security their whole life, and then all of a sudden they're supposed to get less. We're bringing our jobs back. We're going to make our economy great again. We have no control. People are flooding across. We can't have it. We either have a border, and I'm not proposing, I will build a wall. I will build a wall. Remember this, the wall will be paid for by Mexico. We are not being treated right. We are not being treated properly. If we don't have borders, if we don't have strength, we don't have a country. People are flowing across. We have to take care of our people. Believe me, it's my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East. Everybody knows it.
So, you know, this is the standard operating procedure to disparage me. That's fine. I don't really
spend
care
a little
about
more
it.
money on the
I can handle it.
commercials.
But if you want to talk about weakness, it's weak to disparage women. It's weak to disparage Hispanics.
I don't disparage.
It's weak to denigrate the disabled. And it's really weak to call John McCain a loser because he was a POW.
I never called him. No, I don't call
That
him
is
a-
outrageous. He's an American hero.
He also
Simple
said
fact
about
is,
language.
I've laid out
Excuse me.
my plans
He said
as it
about
relates to
language. For
immigration.
language. 2 days ago, he said he would take his pants off and moon everybody, and that's fine. Nobody reports that. He gets up and says that, and then he tells me, "Oh, my language was a little bit rough."
Okay.
My language.
Governor Kemp. His policies have been very, very liberal. For most of his life, he has described himself as very pro-choice and as a supporter of partial birth abortion. Right now, today, as a candidate, he supports federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. I disagree with him on that. That's a matter of principle, and I'll
You are the
tell
single
you.
biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. You are the single biggest liar.
All right.
This guy lied. Let me just tell you, this guy lied about Ben Carson when he took votes away from Ben Carson in Iowa, and he just continues. And today, we had robocalls saying Donald Trump is not going to run in South Carolina, where I'm leading by a lot. I'm not going to run. Vote for Ted Cruz. This is the same thing he did to Ben Carson. This guy will say anything. Nasty guy. Now I know why he doesn't have one endorsement from any of his colleagues.
All right, John, I get to respond.
I also happen to call him a lightweight, okay, and I have said that, so I would like to take that back. He's really not that much of a lightweight. And as far as, and I have to say this, he hit my hands. Nobody has ever hit my hands. I've never heard of this one. Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it. CNN just came out with a poll 2 days ago. A national poll where he's at 15, he's at 14, and I'm at 49. So when he says 75%, that would mean that 80% of the people don't dig you, and I'm back down to 50.
Of all the people on the stage, he performs the worst against Hillary Clinton.
Wrong. I beat Hillary Clinton. I beat Hillary Clinton in many polls. I beat Hillary Clinton in many polls.
If you're our nominee,
excuse me, I think I'm talking.
Hold on.
Well, excuse me.
I beat Hillary Clinton in many
Hold on.
Folks, we got to wake up. We cannot elect somebody that doesn't know how to do the job.
This is the man that was a managing general partner at Lehman Brothers when it went down the tubes and almost took every one of us with us, including Ben and myself. He was such a nice guy. And he said, "Oh, I'm never going to attack." But then his poll numbers tanked. That's why he's on the end. And he got nasty. So you know what? You can have him.
And if we will not stand up and force President Obama to veto this bill, shame on us.
You want to go back to them, or do you want to stay with Donald Trump?
Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Friends, delegates, and fellow Americans, I humbly and gratefully accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States. USA, 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 USA. Who would have believed that when we started this journey on June 16th last year, we, and I say we, because we are a team, would have received almost 14 million votes, the most in the history of the Republican Party, and that the Republican Party would get 60% more votes than it received 8 years ago. Who would have believed this? Who would have believed this?
So on behalf of the thousands of patriots in this room and the 5 million NRA members across this country and the tens of millions of who support us, I'm officially announcing the NRA's endorsement of Donald Trump for president. Ladies and gentlemen, the next president of the United States, Donald Trump.
Counterpuncher is ready to meet his greatest competitor, which he names Crooked Hillary Clinton, and begins in must-watch TV in all three debates.
So when you try to act holier than thou, it really doesn't work.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not?
When she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted, as soon as she releases them, I will release my tax return.
And they've also decided who they want to see become president of the United States, too, and it's not me. I've stood up to Russia. I've taken on Putin and others.
She talks tough against Russia, but our nuclear program has fallen way behind, and they've gone wild with their nuclear program. Not good. I am pro-life, and I will be appointing pro-life judges. Well, I think it's terrible. If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah. Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Trump does rallies across the country, gaining great support as he talks jobs, the economy, immigration, and defeating ISIS, as well as supporting our veterans. The competitor explains how it would be a good thing to get along with Russia, China, and others, which he doesn't refer to as the enemy, but rather he calls them his competitors.
If we want America to thrive in the 21st century, then we must stop running from the competition. And instead, we must start totally winning and winning and winning again. Remember when I used to say, we're going to win so much? We're going to win that the people of Missouri are going to go to your governor and they're going to say, Governor, please go see the president. We can't stand winning so much. Remember, I used to say that, right? I used to say it, and that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And then the governor's going to come to that beautiful historic Oval Office. He's going to say to me, Mr. President, the people of Missouri cannot stand all this winning. They don't want to win so much. They love the old way, where they had lousy job numbers, lousy economic numbers, lousy. They loved it. Please, Mr. President, please not. And I'll say, Governor, I don't care what they say in Missouri. We're going to keep winning and winning and winning and winning. Remember?
Thank you all very, very much. What an honor. What an honor. This is so exciting. I have been watching Trump rallies from the very first one. And to be part of one, folks, I'll tell you, it's the night of a lifetime. You know, I was just backstage. You all are so great. This thing it's electric in here, folks, you people at home. This is unreal. I am so hoping that in a few short minutes you start chanting something else. Maybe you'll do. No? I was just talking to people backstage, and somebody said that the president and all of us have been labeled by some Democrats in the media divisive. Divisive? The Democrats haven't even accepted they lost the election in 2016. That's what this is all about.
In Cincinnati, early in his rallies, while talking about illegal immigration, someone near the stage yells out, "Build the wall," and quickly the crowd starts to chant to build the wall. The candidate talks of many ways the wall would be paid for, whether a charge at the border, through trade deals, inferring that Mexico would pay for the wall, doing his funny routines about this. It was his sense of humor that endeared him to his supporters. His routine about winning would bring the house down every time.
To kind of satisfy that more
Janine,
left.
you either have a country or you don't. You can't have everybody pouring into the country illegally. We don't know what we're doing at the border. We have a president that doesn't have a clue, and they're just pouring in. You know, we have incredible Border Patrol people. They can stop it immediately, but they're told not to. People are walking right in front of them and just walking into the country. You can't have it. So you either have a country or you don't have a country. We're going to build a wall. It's going to be a great wall.
Mexico to pay for that
Mexico's
wall?
going to pay for it.
How?
Because they're making a fortune. Mexico.
What are you gonna
Do you
do,
know
sue
that
them?
Nabisco just announced they're closing a big plant in Chicago? Nabisco, Oreos. You eat Oreos, I eat
I
Oreos.
used to.
I might not anymore.
Right.
But Nabisco is moving their plant to Mexico. How is that? Ford is building a massive plant in Mexico.
But how can you get Mexico to pay?
It's called negotiation. Now, a politician can't do it because...
We're in the middle of a crisis on our southern border. The unprecedented surge of illegal migrants from Central America is harming both Mexico and the United States, and I believe the steps we will take, starting right now, will improve the safety in both of our countries. It's going to be very, very good for Mexico. A nation without borders is not a nation. Beginning today, the United States of America gets back control of its borders, gets back its borders. Thank you. I just signed 2 executive orders that will save thousands of lives, millions of jobs, and billions of dollars. These 2 orders are part of an immigration reform we outlined during the campaign. I want to emphasize that we will be working in partnership with our friends in Mexico to improve safety and economic opportunity on both sides of the border. I have deep admiration for the people of Mexico, and I greatly look forward to meeting again with the President of Mexico. We'll be doing that shortly. We will discuss close coordination on many important issues between our countries. This coordination includes the dismantling of cartels and keeping illegal weapons and cash from flowing out of America and into Mexico, out of our country, out of the United States, and it goes right into Mexico. They have to stop it. We have to stop it. We are going to save lives on both sides of the border. And we also understand that a strong and healthy economy in Mexico is very good for the United States. Very, very good. We want that to happen. By working together on a positive trade, safe borders, and economic cooperation, I truly believe we can enhance the relation between our 2 nations to a degree not seen before, certainly in a very, very long time. I think our relationship with Mexico is going to get better. We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice. Build that wall. 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 Build that wall.
It's November the 6th, 2016. The world was watching as the media and all the pundits said Trump would not make the 270 needed for the Electoral College. Little did they know that a silent majority was forming to create the most exciting night in election history. Here is how the amazing night went. It was a miracle night as state after state went for Trump.
On Tuesday, November 8th, America will vote to elect the next president of the United States. But the votes of residents in just a few states will likely be the ones that really make the difference. Under the Electoral College system, it's the candidate who wins the most electoral votes, not necessarily the popular vote who wins the presidency. Electoral votes are divided between states based mainly on population. Every state except Maine and Nebraska award electoral votes on a winner-take-all basis. If a candidate gets more than half the vote in a state, he or she gets all of its electors. Thanks to public opinion surveys and historical election data, we already have a good idea which candidate will win in a majority of the states. Here are the states that are almost certain to vote Democratic. And these states are almost certain to vote Republican. So before anyone even casts a ballot, it's probably safe to assume that Clinton will get at least 217 electoral votes, and Trump will get at least 191. The remaining states are considered battleground states, the states that are often too close to call ahead of the election. According to the Real Clear Politics poll averages as of the first week of August, Clinton leads in every one of these 10 states by varying margins. The states where she leads by more than 5 points are Colorado, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Virginia. Winning just these states would bring Clinton to 273 electoral votes, which would already mean game over for Trump. But what's the most probable path to a Trump victory? Well, let's stipulate he wins the 5 swing states where he's within 3 points of Clinton in the polls: Nevada, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, and Florida. That would bring him to 265 electoral votes, meaning he'd need to win at least one additional state to take the election. His best bet? Probably Pennsylvania. Although no Republican has won the state since 1988, its western half has become progressively more red over the last few election cycles.
And we have our first projections of the night. Take a look at this. Donald Trump, we project, will win in Kentucky with its 8 electoral votes. Donald Trump wins in Kentucky. Donald Trump also wins in Indiana with its 11 electoral votes. His running mate's home state. Both wins, Kentucky and Indiana for Donald Trump. We have more projections right now. We project that Hillary Clinton is the winner in Vermont.
Fox News election alert for you now. We are waiting on several critical states. We have already called Ohio for Donald Trump, as we brought to you moments ago. We are about to make a major call. Fox News Decision Desk is now projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of North Carolina. And that is huge for Donald Trump. This is exactly what he needed to do. Win Ohio, win North Carolina. Florida's part of it, and then pick off a blue. That's what he's trying to do.
It is now 11:30 in the East. You hear that chime? We have a projection. It is a big one. It is the state of Florida. 29 electoral votes. They go to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has won the state of Florida, one of his must-win states right there, one of his keys to victory. He said all along he was going to win that state. He's got a home in that state. He worked hard in that state. He has pulled out a victory there. He is pulling ahead of Hillary Clinton. You see it right there, 222 electoral votes to 197 for Hillary Clinton. Matthew Dowd, this is a big one.
Some big news here, Megyn. Huge news, actually. The AP now projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of Pennsylvania.
That is the race, frankly. There is no path forward for Hillary Clinton. If this, we've just seen that Pennsylvania has been called by AP. I think for me, this is one of the most stunning results of the night. We had seen her up comfortably 5 to 6 points.
We're going to make this decision now. The Fox News Decision Desk has called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This means that Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States.
After the president-elect wins, he made his speech late early morning to accept and unify the country. Yet for so many, they were depressed and crying, not expecting just how big the president-elect won.
I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. And I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together, to deal with the many challenges that we face. And in the meantime, Michelle has had a chance to greet the incoming First Lady, and we had an excellent conversation with her as well, and we want to make sure that they feel welcome as they prepare to make this transition. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the President in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
With the new president sworn in, the media and academia joined forces with the Democrats, and fake news is born. With the rise of the fake news, as we would find out years later, the narrative of collusion with Russia began, and has done such damage that 92% of the media would be biased against the president. People learn that they cannot trust most of the media's stories. Meanwhile, academia rents up its hatred, and the far left pushes. After Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein sends a letter about the abuses of James Comey of the FBI, the president fires Comey, and based on a fake dossier from the DNC and Fusion GPS, a special prosecutor is created based on Comey leaking information to create it. So began the Russian collusion narrative, still in the background today.
This week will mark the 1-year anniversary of the beginning of the Trump administration, yet still the never-ending Russia investigation grinds on. Steve Bannon was just subpoenaed to appear before Special Counsel Robert Mueller's grand jury. He also testified today before the House Intelligence Committee. Bannon refused to answer the committee's questions about his time at the White House. That prompted committee members to subpoena him on the spot. Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina was there, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So did Bannon admit being a Russian agent? What did we learn?
We learned about a new privilege that before today did not exist. It's an executive privilege that covers transition communications, communications while you're working at the White House, and then communications after you separate from service at the White House. So that's why the subpoena was issued. It's because it is the most tortured analysis of executive privilege I have ever heard of. So when you make very provocative claims like treason and unpatriotic, and there's a 0% chance that these Russian lawyers weren't walked up to then see candidate Trump, then you're going to be asked about it, and you're going to be asked a lot about it, and that's what we tried to do today.
But does anyone believe those claims are true? I mean, I'm sort of losing track of the point of this whole exercise. Does anybody on Capitol Hill think the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government in order to subvert our democracy?
Well, I can't speak for my friends on the other side of the aisle. Adam Schiff said he had evidence of collusion before we even started. I have seen no evidence of collusion between the Russians and President Trump, between the Russians and the Trump campaign. But it was Steve Bannon who used the word treasonous, and it was Steve Bannon who used the word unpatriotic. Those are two pretty serious accusations to level, particularly at the president's son. So you're going to be asked about it, and he also needed to be asked about things that happened with respect to Comey. The reason we had a little hiccup this morning was because executive privilege now covers things before you become the chief executive, which is just mind-numbing, and there's no legal support for it. But we can't make a witness answer a question.
So you've been in the middle of this investigation for a long time. What's your conclusion? Do you think your Democratic colleagues are acting in good faith?
I'm not good at judging people's motives. I can tell you, having been around Congress for 7 years, there's a built-in advantage for the Democrats in dragging this out as long as they possibly can. And they were really, really reticent to start. So once you are reticent to start, that tells me that you don't have an end date. They want this to drag through the 2018 elections. They want to retake the House. It is our responsibility to conduct as thorough an investigation as we can, but also do it in the most expedited way that we can. It'd be really helpful if the Democrats wanted to get started a little sooner, like in March or April of this year, but they didn't. So that's the politics. But quite frankly, Tucker, I don't think any of your viewers are holding their breath waiting on what a congressional investigation uncovers. I think they're waiting on Bob Mueller because his investigation carries more credence. Director Comey, Secretary Clinton said she never sent or received any classified information over her private email. Was that true?
Our investigation found that there was classified information sent.
So it was not true.
Right. That's what I said.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for a little shorter answer, so you and I are not here quite as long. Secretary Clinton said there was nothing marked classified on her emails, either sent or received. Was that true?
That's not true. There were a small number of portion markings on, I think, 3 of the documents.
Secretary Clinton said, I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. Was that true?
There was classified material emailed.
Secretary Clinton said she used just one device. Was that true?
She used multiple devices during the 4 years of her term as Secretary of State.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
Secretary Clinton said neither she nor anyone else deleted work-related emails from her personal account. Was that true?
That's a harder one to answer. We found traces of work-related emails on devices or in Slack space, whether they were deleted or whether when a server was changed out, something happened to them. There's no doubt that there were work-related emails that were removed electronically from the email system.
Secretary Clinton said her lawyers read every one of the emails and were overly inclusive. Did her lawyers read the email content individually?
No.
Well, in the interest of time, and because I have a plane to catch tomorrow afternoon, I'm not going to go through any more of the false statements, but I am going to ask you to put on your old hat. False exculpatory statements, they are used for what?
Well, either for a substantive prosecution or for evidence of intent in a criminal prosecution.
Exactly. Intent and consciousness of guilt, right? Is that right?
Right.
Consciousness of guilt and intent. In your old job, you would prove intent, as you just referenced, by showing the jury evidence of a complex scheme that was designed for the very purpose of concealing the public record. And you would be arguing, in addition to concealment, the destruction that you and I just talked about, or certainly the failure to preserve. You would argue all of that under the heading of intent. You would also be arguing the pervasiveness of the scheme, when it started, when it ended, and the number of emails, whether they were originally classified or up-classified. You would argue all of that under the heading of intent. You would also probably, under common scheme or plan, argue the burn bags of daily calendar entries or the missing daily calendar entries as a common scheme or plan to conceal. 2 days ago, Director, you said a reasonable person in her position should have known a private email was no place to send and receive classified information. You're right, an average person does know not to do that. This is no average person. This is a former First Lady, a former United States Senator, and a former Secretary of State that the President now contends is the most competent, qualified person to be president since Jefferson. He didn't say that in 2008, but he says it now. She affirmatively rejected efforts to give her a state.gov account. She kept these private emails for almost 2 years and only turned them over to Congress because we found out she had a private email account. So you have a rogue email system set up before she took the oath of office, thousands of what we now know to be classified emails, some of which were classified at the time. One of her more frequent email comrades was in fact hacked, and you don't know whether or not she was. And this scheme took place over a long period of time and resulted in the destruction of public records, and yet you say there is insufficient evidence of intent. You say she was extremely careless, but not intentionally so. You and I both know intent is really difficult to prove. Very rarely do defendants announce, on this date, I intend to break this criminal code section. Just to put everyone on notice, I am going to break the law on this date. It never happens that way. You have to do it with circumstantial evidence. Or if you're Congress and you realize how difficult it is to prove specific intent, you will formulate a statute that allows for gross negligence. My time is out, but this is really important. You mentioned there's no precedent for criminal prosecution. My fear is there still isn't. There's nothing to keep a future Secretary of State or President from this exact same email scheme or their staff. And my real fear is this. It's what the chairman touched upon. This double-track justice system that is rightly or wrongly perceived in this country. That if you are a private in the Army and you email yourself classified information, you will be kicked out. But if you are Hillary Clinton and you seek a promotion to Commander-in-Chief, you will not be.
Is the final authority. But what happens when BuzzFeed tries to do real news? Well, in early 2017, we found out. The site released the now famous Trump dossier. It was a catalog of salacious and unverified gossip, financed by the DNC originally, about President-elect Trump. Many other news outlets, nearly all of them anti-Trump, had seen the dossier, but they passed on it. It was just too irresponsible to run. But not BuzzFeed. They thought it was perfect. Meow! So they ran it. 2 years later, the BuzzFeed dossier has come to define the entire Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy tale. The problem is, a lot of the dossier is pretty clearly untrue. For example, one of the key claims in the dossier that BuzzFeed ran is that Trump attorney Michael Cohen held secret meetings with Russian agents in Prague. They never offered any evidence that that happened. There never was any evidence. And then finally, last week, Michael Cohen himself confirmed it never happened.
You have been to Prague?
I've never been to Prague.
Never have?
I've never been to the Czech Republic.
You'll balance my time.
Well, so that seems like a pretty big development. 2 years ago, BuzzFeed told us, you remember it, we did a show on it, that Michael Cohen held a secret meeting with Russian spies in Prague. We've been hearing about that ever since in Congress and on cable news. We have, in fact, halted the normal workings of government, in part because of that meeting. Now it turns out it never took place. So it's not a small thing to learn from Michael Cohen. How did BuzzFeed cover this latest stunning development? Well, they didn't cover it. They ignored it completely. As of tonight, BuzzFeed was promoting instead a story entitled 21 Completely Life-Changing Things You Can Make in a Waffle Maker. There was nothing about the non-existent Michael Cohen Russian spy meeting in Prague. If you only read BuzzFeed, you would never know that that story was false. Well, apparently a lot of people in media only read BuzzFeed and not simply for its lavish cat coverage. This January, BuzzFeed published a story with this sentence, quote, President Donald Trump directed his longtime attorney Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about negotiations to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, end quote. BuzzFeed presented no evidence to show that that was actually true, just unnamed sources, but it didn't matter. The cat lovers on cable news went crazy.
This would be certainly a bombshell information.
BuzzFeed's latest bombshell report.
The White House is slamming a bombshell report by BuzzFeed.
The bombshell report from BuzzFeed.
If the BuzzFeed bombshell is true.
The bombshell report.
It was really a bombshell. And actually, in some sense, it was. The claim was, anyway, directing someone to lie under oath is a felony, and it ought to be. Had this been true, the Trump presidency likely would have ended, and for good reason, legitimate reason. But it wasn't true. Instead, it was a lot like the claim that, I don't know, cats suck the breath from babies, or that a black cat brings bad luck. It was a wives' tale posing as fact. The Mueller investigation itself batted down BuzzFeed's story almost immediately after it came out. And yet, BuzzFeed never retracted the piece. Once again, in its feline way, the site pretended that nothing had happened. You can yell at a cat, but you can't make a cat pay attention, it turns out. To be clear, here are the key quotes from the January BuzzFeed story. Quote, Trump directed his longtime attorney Michael Cohen to lie to Congress, end quote. And again, quote, the president personally instructed him to lie, end quote. And once again, quote, it is the first known example of Trump explicitly telling a subordinate to lie directly about his own dealings with Russia. Explicitly telling a subordinate to lie. That's the claim. Okay. Democratic members of Congress asked Michael Cohen last week about that specific claim. Cohen was under oath at the time, a declared enemy of Donald Trump, not someone who had any reason to lie about this. Here's how he responded.
Mr. Trump did not directly tell me to lie to Congress. That's not how he operates.
Okay, let's try to just make sure we've got this totally clear. Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie. He personally instructed him to lie. He, quote, explicitly told him to lie. Those are the claims from BuzzFeed. Did Michael Cohen really do that? Here's his account again.
Did the president in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no Russia, there's no collusion, there's no involvement, there's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long.
Sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
First 2 years, President Trump creates the world's best economy, best financial figures on jobs and GDP, works on immigration and taking care of the veterans, and rebuilding our military. The competitor checks off 289 achievements in his first 2 years. People are getting used to things getting accomplished. While the president did promises made, promises kept, the First Lady shows her caring for our children and our veterans and creates the Be Best campaign.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the White House. As a mother and as First Lady, it concerns me that in today's fast-paced and ever-connected world, children can be less prepared to express or manage their emotions, and oftentimes turn to forms of destructive or addictive behavior such as bullying, drug addiction, or even suicide. I feel strongly that as adults, we can and should be best at educating our children about the importance of a healthy and balanced life. So today, I'm very excited to announce Be Best, an awareness campaign dedicated to the most valuable and fragile among us, our children. There is one goal to be best, and that is to educate children about the many issues they are facing today. If we truly listen to what our kids have to say, whether it be their concerns or ideas, adults can provide them the support and tools they need to grow up to be happy and productive adults who contribute positively to society and their global communities. At the same time, children deserve every opportunity to enjoy their innocence. Every child should know it is safe to make mistakes and that there are supportive adults and friends nearby to catch them if they fell. We also need to be mindful that they should learn to trust in themselves and their own emotions. I believe our responsibility lies in the critical time before a child reaches adulthood. Let us teach children the importance of all aspects of their well-being, which includes a social, emotional, and physical health. There are too many critical issues facing children today. So the three main pillars of Be Best will include well-being, social media use, and opioid abuse. Together, I believe we should strive to provide kids with the tools they need to cultivate their social and emotional health. We can and should teach children the importance of social and self-awareness, positive relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Once a child understands these vital skills, they will be able to communicate openly with one another and instill positive feelings of mutual respect, compassion, and self-esteem. Let us teach our children the difference between right and wrong and encourage them to be best in their individual paths in life. Take, for example, Christian Bucks, a young man from York, Pennsylvania, who is here with us today. When he was in second grade, Christian introduced the Buddy Bench at his elementary school to address loneliness and help other kids build new friendships. The Buddy Bench allows classmates to connect during recess and helps ensure that no student feels lonely. If a child sits on the bench, it signals other students to come over and ask them to play. Christian school and community embrace the Buddy Bench, and today at least one can be found in all 50 states. Thank you, Christian, for your commitment to kindness. You should be very proud of your work, which is, I know, help out countless children. Please stand up. I'd also like to talk about Orchard Lake Middle School in West Bloomingfield Township, Michigan. I visited the school in October as part of National Bullying Prevention Month to speak to its students about the importance of being kind. While I was there, I visited their Viking Huddle class, which focuses on social emotional learning and teaches lessons about respecting others, inclusion, and being kind. As part of Be Best, I plan to highlight ideas and programs such as Buddy Bench and Viking Huddle class, with the hope that other schools or community groups will be inspired to replace their efforts and take steps to improve the well-being of our children. We have invited some of the Viking Huddle class here today. Thank you all for being and taking time here with us in the White House. As we all know, social media can be both positively and negatively affect on our children, but too often it's used in negative ways. When children learn positive online behaviors early on, social media can be used in productive ways and can affect positive change. I do believe that children should be both seen and heard, and it is our responsibility as adults to educate and remind them that when they are using their voices, whether verbally or online, they must choose their words wisely and speak with respect and compassion. As an example, Kalani Goldberg, an 8th grade student from Arizona, posted a video to her social media account to share the challenges she faced from bullies. In the video, she said, "Every day you're hurting me. Every day you're hurting each other. So please stop. Stop hurting me." Kalani and her family have joined us here today, and I'm happy to report that since posting her video, many have watched it, and most importantly, people have reached out to offer support and kindness. Thank you, Kalani, for being brave enough to share your story and also for using your experience to bring positive change. Please stand up, Kalani. I first learned about the real consequences of our nation's opioid epidemic during my husband's campaign. Since then, I have met with and learned from many people who have been affected by this true crisis. In October, I traveled to West Virginia to tour Lily's Place, the nation's first nonprofit infant recovery center. Lily's Place puts a priority on the whole family, so that infants born dependent on drugs are given the best opportunity to thrive. They have been successful in this endeavor because parents are also given the support and tools needed to recover and succeed. Lily's Place is a testament to the extraordinary work that everyday people can do when they put their mind to it. I will use my best to bring attention to programs such as this in order to encourage conversation and replication. In February, I went to Cincinnati Children's Hospital in Ohio, and a panel of doctors briefed me on the devastating effects that opioids are having, but also their important research on neonatal abstinence syndrome. I'm pleased to say that the representatives from both Lily's Place and Cincinnati Children's Hospital are here today. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your heroic work on behalf of children. I want to thank the many people I have met with and learned from over the past year while researching these vital topics on behalf of children. This includes the cabinet secretaries who have joined us here today, as well as representatives from Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Snap, Amazon, National Safety Council, and so many more. I would like to thank the President, the Vice President, Karen Pence, and other members of the administration, as well as the members of Congress who are here today. I'm honored to have you all with me, and I look forward to working together on the behalf of children in the coming years. In my time as First Lady of the United States, I will make every effort to be best at championing the many successful well-being programs in existence today and teach the tools and skills for emotional, social, and psychical well-being. I will also work to shine a spotlight on the people, organizations, and programs across the country that are helping children overcome the many issues they're facing as they grow up. I will continue speaking with leaders in the technology industry about children's online habits and raising awareness around the importance of positive behaviors. I will continue to work with those who are fighting drug addiction. And most importantly, I will continue to travel and speak to children directly about both their victories and difficult realities they face. My hope is that together we can be best at helping children and families find effective ways to educate themselves and support each other. I'm asking you all to join me in providing support and guidance to our children so that we can make a real difference. How we raise and educate our children on a variety of topics will provide the blueprint for the next generation. Together, let's encourage children to dream big, think big, and do all they can to be best in everything that they do. Thank you all for being here today. God bless you, your families, our children, and God bless the United States of America. It is my pleasure to call my husband to the stage to sign a proclamation calling today, May 7th, Be Best Day. Mr. President?
Melania, thank you very much. That was truly a beautiful and heartfelt speech. It's the way she feels, very strongly. America is truly blessed to have a First Lady who is so devoted to our country and to our children. Over the past 15 months, Melania has visited hospitals, schools, families who have suffered from the opioid crisis and suffered very deeply. Everywhere she has gone, Americans have been touched by her sincerity, moved by her grace, and lifted by her love. Melania, your care and compassion for our nation's children, and I have to say this, and I say it to you all the time, inspires us all. Today we pledge to be best. Best for our families, best for our communities, and best for our nation. And now I am proud to sign the Be Best proclamation, and I think you all know who's going to get the pen. Thank you.
President Trump is the military's best friend as he works with Secretary Mattis to rebuild the military. Problem was, there were more veterans killed in accidents from faulty equipment than on the battlefield. The president was unhappy, but signs the omnibus bill, which includes $700 billion first year and $716 billion the next year, and begins to rebuild America's military.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to return to our troops, their families, the civilians of the Department of Defense, because I know how committed they are and devoted they are to the defense of our country, the defense of our Constitution. And with our allies strengthened, with our country strengthened, I look forward to being the civilian leader so long as the Congress gives me the waiver and the Senate votes to consent. Thank you very much.
Around the world, we face rogue regimes, terrorist groups, and rivals like China and Russia that challenge our interests, our economy, and our values. In confronting these horrible dangers, we know that weakness is the surest path to conflict, and unmatched power is the surest means to our true and great defense. For this reason, I am asking Congress to end the dangerous defense sequester and fully fund our great military. No one has shown more contempt for other nations and for the well-being of their own people than the depraved regime in North Korea. It is responsible for the starvation deaths of millions of North Koreans and for the imprisonment, torture, killing, and oppression of countless more. We were all witness to the regime's deadly abuse when an innocent American college student, Otto Warmbier, was returned to America only to die a few days later. We saw it in the assassination of the dictator's brother using banned nerve agents in an international airport. We know it kidnapped a sweet 13-year-old Japanese girl from a beach in her own country to enslave her as a language tutor for North Korea's spies. If this is not twisted enough, now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. We must work together and confront together those who threaten us with chaos, turmoil, and terror. If the righteous many do not confront the wicked few, then evil will triumph. No one has shown more contempt for other nations and for the well-being of their own people than the depraved regime in North Korea. If this is not twisted enough, now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. I feel really great. We're going to have a great discussion, and I think tremendous success. We'll be tremendously successful. And it's my honor, and we will have a terrific relationship, I have no doubt.
Well, it was not easy to get here. The past worked as fetters on our wings, and the old prejudices and practices worked as obstacles on our way forward, but we overcame all of them, and we are here today. That's true. What does that mean?
As the Mueller investigation hangs over the president's head, President Trump has been in no collusion and no obstruction. During this time, our president creates the world's greatest economy, more jobs than people to fill them, and averages a 3 GDP for 2018. Yet he gets no credit from the coalition of Democrats, the media, and academia, who only are about resist and obstruct. Despite this, Trump gets 2 Supreme Court justices on the highest court of the land, with Gorsuch and Kavanaugh.
Congressional battle over the next Supreme Court justice is now over, but the hard feelings and political consequences will last a long time. President Trump's pick, Neil Gorsuch, was confirmed today.
None of the individuals Professor Ford says were at the party has any recollection at all of that night. I do not believe that these charges can fairly prevent Judge Kavanaugh from serving on the court.
Collins will vote yes.
I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
Republican.
As the year 2019 gets closer, President Trump does an incredible job on the trade USMCA deal, European Union, South Korea, and continues to work with China. The fight for the wall intensifies and continues into 2019. The end of 2018 marked by a big bipartisan win on justice reform.
I've got breaking news right now. It looks like a sweeping victory for criminal justice reform. Finally, the Senate just passed the First Step Act, 87-12. It is that criminal justice reform package backed by President Trump and pushed by his son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner. The bill eases mandatory minimum sentences, increases good time credits that can allow for early release, and encourages participation in rehabilitative programs, among other things. It still has to go back to the House and be signed by the president before it becomes law.
I really did, Sandra, and I appreciate Kim Kardashian West for using her celebrity for something that does good. Look, I understand a lot of people want to lock folks up and keep them there forever, but 22 years for a first-time nonviolent offender? There are a lot of people across America who have murdered people who will never serve even a third of that amount of time. My prison director in Arkansas, Larry Norris, used to say, we lock a lot of people up that we're mad at rather than the ones we're afraid of. And the fact is, at over $33,000 per year per inmate average, and that sometimes can be as much as $75,000, $80,000 a year, it's not working. It's not really helping us resolve a crime problem. And the truth is, Sandra, we don't have a crime problem as much as we have a drug and alcohol problem. A lot of the people that we're incarcerating, we need to be putting them in treatment centers. So I applaud the president because this took a lot of guts for him to do this. There's never, ever a political upside to granting any type of clemency, be it a commutation or a pardon.
Is to replace NAFTA with the USMCA, a truly groundbreaking achievement, modern-day agreement. The USMCA is the largest, most significant modern and balanced trade agreement in history.
As of March 24th, 2019, Attorney General William Barr summarized the Mueller report this way. President Trump and no other American were involved, despite numerous attempts from Russia, in the collusion or obstruction of justice. This is a reason for America to celebrate the truth now that Attorney General Barr has given it to us. He's also said that he's going to go after the real perpetrators of this false narrative, Hillary Clinton, the DNC, for the false dossier. Lastly, Attorney General Barr is also going to look into the weaponization of our intelligence services, the Department of Justice, the FBI. Imagine what could have been accomplished had this cloud not been over the president for the last 2 years.
Joining me now in an exclusive interview is Republican Congressman John Ratcliffe from Texas. He sits on the House Judiciary, Intelligence, and Homeland Security Committees. He is also a former federal prosecutor. And Congressman, it is always a pleasure to see you.
Good morning, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. First, your reaction to the president just there on the Mueller report.
Well, I remember when, after the election, Donald Trump said, let's turn the page, let's move on from Hillary Clinton. Unfortunately for the president, Hillary and the Democrats were not nearly so gracious. They weren't ready to turn the page or move on from his election. In fact, they were already working to undermine him. Hillary and the Democrats, unbeknownst to the president, had already funded the fake, phony dossier that they then peddled through the intelligence community of the Obama administration, Clapper and Brennan, to Comey and Lynch at the Department of Justice and the FBI, who falsely verified it, all of which wasn't true. And so when the president expresses concern about the Mueller investigation, given the fact that some of those same people started that process, he has every right to wonder whether or not he's going to be treated fairly. Having said that, without having seen a single word of the Mueller report, the one takeaway that we already have, we know is positive for the president. There are no indictments for collusion. There was no conspiracy or collusion with the Russians.
You know, Congressman, you have seen every document that any member of Congress was able to see throughout this whole period. You've been one of my regular guests on Sunday here for the last 2 years. Because of your intelligence on the subject, because of you seeing every document, you have been one of the reasons that I, too, have been pretty adamant about the no collusion situation in the last 2 years. Our viewers are smarter as a result of it because of what you've shared and some of your other colleagues. Devin Nunes has done a great job on this as well. What are you expecting? Give us your sense. You're going to get that. You're going to get that summary in, what do you think, the next couple of hours?
I think in the next few hours.
Okay. So what are you expecting that is going to be most important for you to look at within this report and this summary?
Well, again, what a senior Department of Justice official has already confirmed is that Bob Mueller is going to issue no further indictments. What that means is no indictments for collusion or conspiracy. And what the American people need to remember was the primary mandate of Bob Mueller, the reason we had Bob Mueller, were Americans conspiring with Russians to undermine the 2016 election? And the answer to that is no. Bob Mueller, who was not limited by time or expense or by resources, apparently is concluding there was no collusion, there was no conspiracy, there were no crimes by Donald Trump or those associated with him as it related to Russia and Vladimir Putin. And if that is true, Maria, the most important takeaway, I think, and the ironic takeaway for the American people would be that the very people who for 2 years have been accusing Donald Trump of treason, who have accused him of working with Vladimir Putin, would themselves be the ones responsible for giving Vladimir Putin his greatest victory over American democracy. Think about that. A dossier funded by the Democrats, peddled through the Obama intelligence community, falsely verified by the Obama Justice Department, then sold to the American people by those very same elected Democrats and willing folks in the media. All of that taking place really is extraordinary. Vladimir Putin, in his wildest dreams, could not have devised a more destructive scheme to the fabric of American society, and yet it has consumed the public discourse for the last 2 years.
Right. And that's what I want to ask you. We're going to take a short break. I want to ask you about the accountability here. John Brennan, James Clapper, Jim Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Jim Baker, the lawyer. And then Jim Comey has the nerve to write an op-ed about this in this past week.
Yeah. The special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. As the report states, the investigation did not, quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. That is a quote from the Mueller report.
As per our title, we said we were creating this film from a veteran's perspective. As a disabled veterans organization certified by the VA, we appreciate all that the President has done for our veterans. He created choice, so no veteran must wait to see a doctor. Accountability was created to fix the VA. Our veterans got a pay raise. President Trump changes the rules of engagement, and the military destroys the caliphate of ISIS. And most of all, our president uses political capital and ends the continuing resolutions known as CRs to get the military funded for the next 2 years, saving our men and women in uniform. We are grateful for what our president has done for our veterans in real actions, not just in words. Keep America great, Mr. President.
I am truly honored and humbled to be speaking here today. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to serve my country. And in the summer of 2009, I had the privilege of deploying as an infantryman with the 82nd Airborne to conduct combat operations in southern Afghanistan. I prepared myself for the worst, death and dismemberment. On April 24th, 2010, I stepped on an improvised explosive device that caused life-altering injuries. My long road home has included over 100 surgeries and years of speech, visual, physical, and occupational therapies. I knew that such injuries were a risk of the enlistment that I made. What I was not prepared for was coming home to a broken VA system. I wasn't prepared to wait 57 days for a signature on a piece of paper so that my only prosthetic limb could be repaired. I wasn't prepared to be asked to make a 3-hour round trip so that just last year they could check to see if I still had my serious combat injuries. I wasn't prepared to watch my wife beg, plead, and make countless phone calls so that I could receive what was often basic and necessary medical care. But today is a new day, and this administration has fulfilled its promise that the veteran is empowered and the veteran is in charge of his or her own care. Under the previous administration, I waited over 3.5 years for required adaptive changes to be made so that I could safely reside in my own home. Under President Trump, with the assistance of Secretary Shulkin, these changes were made within weeks. Today, our President, Donald Trump, will sign this important bill into law that will ensure real accountability for our nation's veterans. Dr. Shulkin will be empowered to ensure that the VA adheres to the standard of excellence it promotes, and that the employees who are at the VA are the ones that have a servant's heart for those that have worn our nation's uniform. The most difficult part of my war injuries were coming home to such a broken system. Thank you, President Trump and Secretary Shulkin, for ensuring that we are not forgotten and that we will receive the care we need and deserve. Thank you.
knows unrest. You better think of something else instead. You're so afraid of being honest with yourself.